Hello and welcome to What Did I Miss, where today I'm going over the 10th episode of the first season of Star Trek Lower Decks, titled No Small Parts, and looking for Easter eggs, references, and fan-created ship designs. Before I go over this amazing finale, please hit that like button, and if this is your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button as well. Also, let me know in the comments what were your favorite parts of this episode. This was a triumphant ending to a great first season that saw the crew fully realize their potential against an old adversary that comes within moments of annihilating the Cerritos and her crew. The episode also had some of the most surprising callbacks of the entire season, while also upping the stakes of the show itself with a poignant ending that changes the face of the show going forward. First, I will go over the episode and let you know all the Easter eggs to past Trek that I saw, and then let you know what I thought of this episode as well as what I learned from watching the Star Trek's virtual panel at New York Comic Con, which includes some incredible details about another Star Trek animated series. This is What Did I Miss?
I heard that's more your specialty.
This is your spoiler warning for the week, so please go check out this episode and come back here. I believe that CBS All Access is offering another free trial right now, so you can binge the whole series for free if you would like. And I'll put a link to that down in the description of this video. In the beginning of the episode, the Cerritos is checking in on Beta 3, and we see that the inhabitants of the planet are once again worshipping Landru. These are all references to an original series first season episode named The Return of the Archons, in which the planet is under the influence of a machine named Landru. Landru is ultimately defeated by Kirk, who creates a paradox that it cannot solve, which is what Captain Freeman threatens Landru with in this episode as well. Ransom then brings up a pad with pictures of Kirk and Spock while referencing Landru, and the pictures that are shown are from the original animated series. Later, Ransom calls the 2260s the TOS era, which he says means totally old scientists, and brings up Spock and McCoy. The TOS era is what the original series era of Star Trek is commonly abbreviated to. Captain Freeman also mentions a gamester of Triskelion to Ransom. This is a reference to a second season TOS era episode in which Kirk is forced to fight in a gladiator-style arena. The ill-fated Solvang is also the name of a city in California, following the tradition of all the other California-class ships we have seen on the show. The captain of the Solvang is Captain Dayton, who we saw on the Rubidoux in the 7th episode of this season of Lower Decks. After Rutherford learns that Captain Freeman is Mariner's mother, he states that Captain Freeman Day is going to be weird. This is a callback to Captain Picard Day, which was shown in the 7th season episode of The Next Generation named the Pegasus. People actually created a real Captain Picard Day that is celebrated annually on June 16th of each year, which is equivalent to the star date mentioned in the episode The Pegasus. Tendi then welcomes a new crew member to the Cerritos that is a robot exocomp. This scene may itself be a reference to Tendi's first appearance this season. The exocomps are sentient robots that were introduced in this Next Generation 6th season episode Quality of Life, which saw them evolve from basic tools used by the Federation to actual living life forms. Mariner briefly speaks with a Lieutenant Levy, who states that Wolf 359 was an inside job, changelings aren't real, and the Dominion War didn't happen. These are all references to events that happened in Star Trek. Wolf 359 happened in Star Trek The Next Generation episode The Best of Both Worlds, and Changelings and the Dominion War were featured in Deep Space Nine. The part about Wolf 359 being an inside job is particularly funny because in a way it was, since the attack was led by a partially assimilated Captain Picard. The species attacking the ships are known as Pac-Led. They were introduced in the 2nd season of the Next Generation episode Samaritan Snare. In that episode, they also tried to trick the Enterprise with a distress call. Ransom also mentions First Contact Day Salmon. First Contact is the event in which the human race first encountered the Vulcans in Bozeman, Montana, and was shown in the movie Star Trek First Contact. Since Montana is known for its fishing, it makes sense that salmon would be associated with it, similar to the way turkey is associated with Thanksgiving, another albeit more violent First Contact event. The crew comes up with a plan to plant a virus in the enemy ship. This plan is remarkably similar to the plan that DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince used in another holiday movie, Independence Day. Badgie is once again seen on the show. This lovable character was introduced in the 6th episode of Lower Decks and looks to still hold a grudge over his father for snapping his neck. After the ship is under attack and being boarded, Mariner unlocks her contraband, which we saw some of in the first episode of the season. But one of the new additions is a helmet we see Billups briefly wear. This is an amazing callback to a toy from 1976 named the Star Trek Space Fun helmet, which really had nothing to do with Star Trek other than the name on the packaging. When the crew begins to defend themselves with these weapons, we see that Boimler is using a fencing sword. In the second episode of the season of Lower Decks, Mariner tells Boimler that they could use a sword guy like Sulu, as Sulu did use a fencing sword. Shax throws Rutherford into the shuttle Sequoia and launches both of them towards the Pac-led ship. The Sequoia was shown to be a broken down shuttlecraft that Rutherford was working on in the first episode of this season. Before Shax pulls a needs of the many outweigh needs of the few death scene, he calls Rutherford Baby Bear. He also referred to Rutherford as such in the 8th episode of the season, with himself and Billups being the other two of the three bears. Right when it looks like the Cerritos will be destroyed, the actual USS Titan appears, with Captain Will Riker and Commander Deanna Troi on the bridge. The ship itself was designed by Star Trek fan and designer Sean Tourangeau, whose design won a contest and was previously used in print materials as well as the Star Trek Online video game. When the ship arrives, we hear the very distinctive theme from The Next Generation, and we see that the crew is also wearing the TNG movie-era style uniform. Besides Riker and Troi, it looks like the first officer of the Titan is Saurian. This lizard-like species was first shown in the original Star Trek motion picture, and there is an officer serving on the Discovery named Linus who is Saurian. After the Cerritos has been damaged and is in space dock, Captain Freeman remarks that she does not want the design of the ship altered so that it does not come out looking all Sovereign class. This is a reference to the Enterprise E, which was commissioned after the destruction of the D model and was a Sovereign class ship, rather than a Galaxy class ship like the Enterprise D was. After Rutherford is revived, it is revealed that he lost some of his memories. This may be a reference to the state of Spock's mind after he was brought back from the dead and put back into service in the movie The Voyage Home. Riker mentions to Mariner that those California-class ships can hold their own longer than people say. This may be a reference to a very weird string of dialogue in the movie First Contact, where after Worf is barely saved by being beamed off the Defiant during the battle with the Borg, and almost definitely lost a good portion of the crew under his command, Riker thinks it's a good idea to razz him about the size of the Defiant and if Worf remembers how to fire phasers. You should really go back and watch it. It's a total dick move. In the bar at the end of the episode, Riker says that Captain Freeman used to be his Chadich. This is another reference to the first episode of the season of Lower Decks, when Mariner says the same line to Boimler. Riker tells Mariner to buy him a drink, and Mariner reminds him they don't use money. I think this is a very smart line of dialogue about how there are still jokes about money used throughout Star Trek, even though the people of the time should know nothing about its use, which is evident when the crew of the Enterprise goes back to 1980s San Francisco in Star Trek The Voyage Home. When Boimler meets some of his crewmates on the Titan, they say they are going to Tulgana 4. This planet, along with the areas referenced, were seen in the second episode of the season of Lower Decks. After Mariner finds out about his promotion, she tells Boimler that she's going to feed him to an Armis. Armis was the entity that killed Tasha Yar in the first season episode of TNG named Skin of Evil. When Riker arrives on the bridge of the Titan, he states he was watching the crew of Archer's Enterprise. This is actually a callback to the series finale of the show Enterprise, in which he actually starred. He also states that it was a long road getting from there to here, which is a line from the show's theme song. We also get to hear Captain Riker's warp tagline that each captain is shown to use in some iteration. His ties back to his well-known love of jazz, which his wife seems to be tiring of. Wow, what a great way to end a season. I will admit that this show definitely grew on me, and up until about episode 4, I was not sure about it, but this ending really rewards those of us that stuck around. First of all, it shows some great character development from each of the Lower Decks crew. Boimler finally grows into the officer he has strived to be, and after showing a great dependence on Mariner, and even admitting to as much to her this episode, he decides to leave her behind to pursue his dream of serving on the Titan. Mike McMahon did say at the New York Comic Con panel that the events of this episode would stick into next season, and expect to see Boimler still on the Titan at the beginning. Mariner seemed to finally be at peace with her career path after having a sincere conversation with her mother, but she may now have a change of heart if she thinks she was betrayed by Boimler. Tendi and Rutherford must also rebuild their relationship now that Rutherford lost his implant during the events of the episode. All in all, this episode is probably one of my favorite things that Star Trek has done in the past 20 years, and I'm incredibly happy with the show and its place in the Star Trek universe. But you let me know in the comments if there are any characters from Trek that you would want to see in this show next season. And if you did not hear, it was also announced that Kate Mulgrew will be reprising her role as Captain Janeway in the new Star Trek animated series named Star Trek Prodigy, set to air on Nickelodeon in 2021. Could we see Janeway cross paths with the Cerritos? Also, it was hinted that there is a live-action episode of the characters possibly crossing over with another Star Trek show like Strange New Worlds in the future. So it is evident that the future is bright and the possibilities are plenty for this franchise. But you let me know in the comments, what did I miss? This also concludes my first series of videos on YouTube, so thank you for watching, and if you would like to see the rest, I will put a link in the description. And I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?